Believers, it's night here in Korea. I have my mask with me when I'm not wearing it because there's almost nobody around. And the people I did encounter on the streets now, they don't wear a mask either, so why would I? So, in this video, I want to talk about ancestral curses. What is an ancestral curse? An ancestral curse is a curse that's passed down to you by your ancestors, 2 generations, we know that. But I want to talk about a specific kind of ancestral curse that we participate in. And the reason why we participate in those curses is because we think it's something noble or something praiseworthy, or sometimes even something biblical. The type of ancestral curses I'm talking about are ancestral trauma bonds. What is an ancestral trauma bond? An ancestral trauma bond is a trauma bond you have with your ancestors. Now you may ask me, Rashid, how can someone have a trauma bond with their ancestors? Well, an ancestor doesn't have to be a great-great-great-great-grandfather from the 1300s. An ancestor is also your parents. Your parents are ancestors. But those are ancestors you grew up with. Your grandparents are also ancestors. Your great-grandparents, if they were alive when you were born, or if they were alive when you were growing up, you knew them also. So an ancestor, when we think about ancestor, we tend to think about people that lived ages ago or centuries ago, and it doesn't have to. And what you often forget is that those ancestors lived centuries ago. They passed down knowledge, they passed down information, they passed down language and cultures to your great-grandparents, grandparents, eventually your parents, and eventually you. So we all got things from our ancestors. The number one thing we got from our ancestors is our looks. If you are from Sub-Sahara Africa, then you are a black individual, and you look black because all your ancestors were black. If you are from Scandinavia, you likely have blonde hair, blue eyes, or at least you have pale white skin in general. Why? Unless you are from migrants, unless you are a daughter or a son of migrants or a migrant community, you have the traits of your ancestors. So you look like your ancestors. Just realize that just like you receive your looks, your language, and even your mannerisms from your ancestors, you also receive toxic behavioral patterns as well as conflicts and violence. You also receive those bad stuff from your ancestors. There are good things you get from your ancestors, absolutely. That's a fact. But often we ignore the bad stuff we received. Because we think that we have to be grateful for everything we receive from our ancestors, and that's not true. Okay. Let me give an example to you. Let's say you're walking down the street like I'm doing now. You're just walking around. And out of the blue, you have this individual walking towards you with a belt in his hands, and he begins to smack you with the belt. Very hard. And when you resist what he's doing, he explodes even more, saying, "Huh? You resist my will? You dare to resist my will?" And he goes off more. You have a police officer that comes by and arrests the individual using his gun. Now, the individual appears before court, and he has to go to jail for battery. And the people around that saw what was going on, and they allowed it to happen, also get a small prison sentence for enabling battery and enabling the disruption of public order. Fair enough. But would you, years later, miss that individual who out of the blue came there and smashed around and physically injured you, that thing that happened that day also harmed you psychologically, and it took you years to process it. And you were a grown man, or if you're a woman, a grown woman when it happened. Even children who hear this would think, what? How can grandma miss the guy that harmed her? Even children will see this doesn't add up. Now, it happens that adults miss people or they cling onto people that harm them. We call it trauma bonds. When someone is trauma bonded to an individual. In a trauma bond, you cannot handle the fact that individual is bad for you. Why? Because you've been tricked into investing in that individual. And it's your investment now that tricks you into thinking that there's something good with that individual if you just invest more. It's a contract that many con artists and scam artists know. The more the victim has invested in the scam or in the con, the harder it becomes for them to see that it's a con and to be recovered from what happened. So, we know what trauma bonds are. And an example I just gave on to you, let's change their belt for a shoe or for a stick. Or maybe just words. Someone just came out of the blue and began to unload verbal violence on you. Would you even dare to develop, how would I say, endearment to such an individual? Endearment means that you are fond of them, you like being around them, or you crave and you long for their presence. Someone that unloaded harm on you, and they never repented, they never had any, how would I say, remorse, nor regret about what they've done. They had their bad day, they had their frustrations, and they didn't want to deal with anything in life, so they desperately want someone to unload their tension upon with no regard of how it would affect you. If you would have died when they were kicking you and beating you, or if you would have ended up committing suicide, all the verbal violence, they don't care. It's all about them being relieved. Who in their right mind would want to be endeared or close to someone as dangerous and filthy like that? Nobody in the right mind. However, what I see in the human species is that most people that walk this earth, they want to have such people around them if those people are relatives or if those people are part of their kin. That is an ancestral trauma bond. Look, if you had parents who did what they could for you, but they were just messed up people, if they did what they could, why did police car did that? Trying to distract me. Satan, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ. If your parents did all they could for you, and that's all, and they had nothing else that they could give, and you can really sense that, okay, these people did what they could and everyone else can see it, okay, then if they were messed up, you would be able to deal with it. You would be able to heal from it. But even then, you would keep them at a distance for everyone's safety, if they were completely messed up. But what if you have parents? Maybe not your parents, but you have parents in general who are simply reprobate. They're filthy and they don't care they're filthy, and you challenge their will, especially if you're one of their children or someone that they consider younger or inferior to them, they unload shamelessly on you. Would you miss such individuals? Would you wish or long to have them close to you and to have a place around you? No, you shouldn't. Yet many people wish to keep reprobate parents, reprobate grandparents, reprobate kin around them Why? Because they are so invested in a reality, in a past that never happened. It's one thing to be fond of your kin. It's one thing to love those that look like you and that you grew up with. There's something wrong with that. That's natural. But it's unnatural when you're trauma bonded to them. It's unnatural when you are wounded by them and they demand you to remain wounded so that they can exploit you easily. And it's more unnatural for you to comply with this at your own expense. Yet I'm telling you, many people are in ancestral trauma bonds. They cannot process reality, and because of that, they cannot heal, and because of that, demons have access to them. So eventually, they are obliged to look for solutions. Look, if someone was stabbed, for example, and if someone was stabbed, they're not aware they're being stabbed. So when the blood is falling out of them, people will warn them, say, "Hey man, you're bleeding." And once it happens, they realize, oh crap, I'm bleeding. And others around them need to do the right thing by calling an ambulance. If the individual is not alert or not in a state to do it him or herself, or if the individual is not even aware they're bleeding, others should call the ambulance saying someone is bleeding, they need help. And it's the responsibility of the victim was with staff to comply with solutions. Because if you keep walking around bleeding, you'll spread blood all over the place and she'll die. And that will traumatize the community and she will be gone. So both for yourself and others, you're obliged to comply with solutions on your own behalf. The same it is with people in those ancestral trauma bonds. There is no excuse for remaining in ancestral trauma bonds. There comes a point you need to see people for what they really are. If they're just broken, if they're just good people that are broken and messed up, that's what they are. But if they are willful participants in darkness and they even explode when challenging them, then they are reprobate. You hear me? Reprobate. And there is no reason why you should miss nor cling on to a reprobate. You should cling onto the Lord, not onto other people to begin with. You can have intense love and endearment and affection for other people. There's nothing wrong with that. But you cling onto the Lord. Because the moment you cling onto other people, you end up in idolatry. You cling onto the Lord and you're flexible with everything and everyone else. And then, when you have intense love for them, you'll be safe. But what happens to worldlings? They cling onto other people and they end up being abused, misused, and some of them turn into perpetrators themselves over time. Go back to the example I gave in the beginning. If an adult assaults another one, whether it's verbally or with physical weapons, or just with their bare hands, they go to jail. Nobody takes it, especially if the adult did it to a weaker adult. If you have a tall adult with big muscles shooting into a small adult, the punishment according to the pagan courthouses will be bigger. And you would say rightfully so. So why is it that for centuries we allowed such filthy behavior to be done towards children? And when it happens to children, well, some children need to learn the hard way. Learn what? To validate. So because grown men and grown women lack self-worth, they don't demand validation of younger people, especially children. When children don't comply, do you have the right to unload on them? How come we've preserved this reprobate, filthy thinking for so long? It's because most of the human species are, let's say it like this, they are in ancestral trauma bonds. Most people in our species are mentally ill. Straight up, I'm saying it for what it is. So, we as believers, we are part of redeemed mankind. We ought to face all these things and walk in the light. You can't walk in the light while investing in darkness. It's not going to happen. It cannot work. So, whatever you do, Do it in the Lord. Be at peace.